town of Riverton, just outside New York, was the kind of place where time moved without urgency. Nothing dramatic ever happened there. Streets looked the same every year. People followed the same routines, and most dreams stayed exactly where they began, unspoken. But every morning at 4:30 a.m., while the town still slept, one house always had its lights on. Ethan Cole lived there. No one really knew much about him. He worked at a warehouse, paid his bills on time, and never caused trouble. To most people, he was invisible, but those who woke early enough always saw the same thing. Ethan running alone through the cold streets, moving at a steady pace, never rushed, never late. Every day, no breaks, no exceptions. People called him strange. Some said he was running from something. Others said he had nothing better to do. Ethan never explained himself. Years earlier, Ethan had been full of potential. Teachers believed in him. Friends expected success. He believed in someday. He believed there would always be more time. Days slipped into weeks, weeks into years, and discipline was replaced by excuses. Then came the phone call that split his life in two. His father died in a car accident on a rainy night. At the funeral, surrounded by people offering comfort, Ethan felt nothing but regret. His father had been a quiet man, not one for speeches, but he lived by one rule he repeated often: consistency wins. Ethan had always nodded, never listening. After the funeral, Ethan returned home and found his father's old notebook on the desk. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't poetic. It was simple. Wake-up times, work hours, exercise, reading, sleep. The same structure, written again and again for decades. That night, Ethan realized something painful and true. His father didn't live loudly, but he lived prepared. The next morning, Ethan woke up at 4:30, not because he felt inspired, not because he felt strong, but because he felt ashamed of the life he had avoided. From that day forward, he never missed a morning. Running turned into studying. Studying turned into skill building. Skill building turned into quiet confidence. He never posted progress, never announced goals. He understood something most people don't. Discipline works best when no one is watching. Years later, when automation replaced most workers at the warehouse, Ethan wasn't fired. He had learned what others ignored. He understood systems, logistics, and responsibility. The same company that once overlooked him promoted him. One morning, a young man stopped Ethan on his run and asked why he never skipped a day. Ethan slowed down and said, "Life tests you without warning. I train so I don't fail when it does." Riverton never changed, but Ethan did, and he never waited for someday. Again, Ethan thought the promotion would change something inside him. He thought there would be relief, satisfaction, maybe even pride. But the truth surprised him. Nothing changed. He still woke up at 4:30, still drank the same glass of water, still ran the same quiet streets. The title on his email signature felt lighter than people expected it to, because Ethan had already learned something most people learn too late: external. Progress does not replace internal order. At the warehouse, he was now responsible for people older than him, louder than him, and far less disciplined than him. They questioned his calm. They questioned his silence. Some mistook it for weakness. They were wrong. When deadlines tightened and systems failed, Ethan didn't raise his voice. He adjusted routines. When workers complained about pressure, he didn't argue. He reorganized time. Slowly, results followed him the same way mornings did, without drama, without noise. But discipline has a cost people don't talk about: loneliness. Ethan didn't have many friends. He skipped late nights. He declined invitations, not because he hated people, but because his life required energy he couldn't afford to waste. Some relationships faded without conflict. Others ended with misunderstanding. "You've changed," they said. They were right. Change isn't loud. It's selective. One winter, Ethan received a letter from the city council. They were starting a youth mentorship program for at-risk teens and needed volunteers. His name had been suggested. He almost threw the letter away. He didn't see himself as a mentor. He still felt like someone fixing his own past. But something made him show up. The room was filled with boys who reminded him of himself. Restless, distracted, convinced time would always forgive them. They didn't listen at first. They never do. So Ethan didn't lecture. He told them his routine. No speeches, no inspiration, just facts. "I wake up early because my life falls apart when I don't," he said. "That's it." One boy laughed. Another rolled his eyes. But one stayed quiet. After the session, that boy waited. "How do you stay consistent?" he asked. Ethan paused. "You don't," he said. "You remove options. You stop negotiating with yourself." The boy nodded like he understood something for the first time. Years passed. Ethan's mornings stayed untouched, but his body started to slow. Small injuries took longer to heal. Cold mornings felt sharper. Discipline didn't protect him from time. It only taught him how to face it without panic. One morning, he overslept. 4:47 a.m. It was the first time in over a decade. For a moment, Ethan sat on the edge of his bed, heart racing, and not from fear, but from awareness. He realized how fragile routines are, how easily they break when taken for granted. He stood up anyway, not to punish himself, not to overcorrect, just to continue. That run was slower, shorter, but it mattered more than any other. Because discipline isn't about perfection, it's about returning before excuses take root. Later that year, Ethan visited his father's grave. He hadn't gone often. He never knew what to say. This time he didn't speak. He stood there steady. As the years moved forward, Ethan stopped counting them. Not because they didn't matter, but because routine had replaced milestones. Birthdays passed quietly. Promotions came and went. Seasons changed, marked not by holidays, but by how the air felt on his morning runs. Riverton aged with him. Shops closed. New families moved in. Old names disappeared from mailboxes. The town never announced its losses. It simply absorbed them. One morning, Ethan noticed a limp in his stride. It wasn't dramatic. No injury, no sharp pain. Just a subtle resistance. Like his body reminding him that consistency doesn't stop biology. He shortened his run, adjusted his pace. Discipline, he had learned, wasn't stubbornness. It was adaptation. At work, younger managers arrived with louder voices and faster ambitions. They talked about optimization, growth, acceleration. Ethan listened more than he spoke. When asked why his system still worked, he answered simply, "They're boring enough to survive." Some laughed, some didn't. A few months later, a sudden supply chain failure hit the region. Panic spread through departments. Meetings turned chaotic. Emails multiplied without solutions. Ethan didn't rush. He arrived early, sat down, took out a pen, wrote down what still worked. While others reacted, he stabilized. By the time executives stepped in, Riverton's warehouse was the only one operating normally. Not because it was smarter, but because it was structured for stress, not comfort. That was when Ethan was offered a regional role. He declined. The decision confused everyone, including himself. But after one quiet night, he understood why. His life had a shape now, and expanding it would distort what he had built. Discipline had given him clarity, not hunger. Instead, he asked for fewer hours and more time. That winter, Ethan started writing. Not for publishing, not for legacy, just notes, observations, the way his father once had. Pages about mornings, mistakes, silence, and how easily people confuse intensity with progress. Sometimes he reread old entries and barely recognized the man who wrote them, not because they were wrong, but because growth had made them incomplete. One evening, a letter arrived. It was from the boy at the mentorship program. No longer a boy, actually. College student now. He wrote that he still woke up early, still ran, still failed some days, but never quit returning. Ethan folded the letter carefully and placed it in his drawer. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He slept well. Years later, Ethan retired quietly. No farewell party, no speech. Just a handshake and a cleared desk. On his last day, he arrived at 4:30 a.m. anyway. The habit outlived the job. His runs became walks. His walks became pauses on benches where he watched mornings happen, without him chasing them. The town now knew him, not as the warehouse manager, but as the old man who never missed sunrise. One morning, snow fell heavier than usual. Ethan slipped. Nothing.